I would be interested in understanding, as we look at all the closed schools, roughly what are the conditions, and again, what would it cost, obviously, because if we already own it, of course, that's much better than having to go purchase land and everything else. So, I mean, there has to be some advantages to this, and whether there was any conversation about how you triage everything and how you prioritize depending on where we are with the overcrowding. The other piece, which I know it's a very difficult balance, is that whole conversation about equity, with smaller sites, and how, we at some point have to also have a great understanding of how would we move forward if we needed to address issues of overcrowding with smaller sites, dare I say BCC Middle School number 2, because it's going to be really important as we're moving forward to understand that there will be some constraints, but what are we offering sort of to counteract this? And it's a really tough conversation. I mean, I was just talking to a young person who was having a second child and decided to buy a home in the county, and was saying to me, that he had never understood until now what it means to buy a home in a certain area, street, block versus another one, and how it could be a difference of $100,000 because of the schools. And, at some point, that's just not so great for us in the county to have that type of bifurcated system where, here it is very well understood. And so I guess, as we're talking about the overcrowding piece, I think we also have to, try to figure out how do we send that message that every single school, should be a great school, and that you shouldn't have to sort of, feel that if you happen to then purchase a home here, or if your boundaries changed, that somehow that already throughout either your investment, or somehow this is not going to be an adequate education for your child. And, all of those things are also very important and play a role in some of the overcrowding issues. Although we're talking here more about, redevelopment efforts and things like that, we never ever talk about, what has fueled a lot of this overcrowding, which has been just families finding ways to live in the county in an affordable fashion by perhaps sharing housing, et cetera. We can't control that necessarily. And, when we look at the students that are coming into the school system every year, we see that there is this issue of socioeconomic levels being very low. Obviously, these are not students that are, taking advantage of these redevelopment residential types of housing. So I feel like we have to also understand that there is that element that we can't necessarily predict, but that I think exacerbates this issue of inequality and which cluster do you want versus the other cluster. Yet, as policymakers, we have no real grasp, and or do we include in any of our formulas this sort of naturally, affordable housing that exists out there. So to me, this is a much broader challenge for us in Montgomery County as we're moving forward every year, and as we see this growth. This is not going to just be an issue of, buildings and opening a school, et cetera. It's going to have a lot of complex consequences, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so I hope that we're also having that conversation about how we try to do whatever we can to make this, the best possible school system. I mean, there was a Washington Post article about Loudoun County, what they're doing right now with the low-income Latino students, right? And so, here we are in our county where diversity is really everywhere. I mean, we still have a couple of areas where maybe you don't see it as much, but it's pretty much widespread. So we must make sure that there isn't a perception or some kind of reality where people think that, oh no, I'm not gonna go there, so I'm gonna concentrate here as much as possible. And I hope that this is sort of like the third work group that we'll have. But I think it's an important conversation to have in a very frank way and not tiptoe around it as much.